We'll do a roll call. Lori Boyette. Here. Scott Christopher.
Here.
Brian Eastridge.
Here.
Dr. Gandhi.
Here.
Elmo Lopez.
Here.
Lisa Price. Lisa Price notified us that she has a school commitment and could not be here. Mr. Ramos.
Here.
Kathy Rogers. Lori Benson. Here. Kevin Cunningham.
Here.
And Craig Ryan. Craig also had to leave. He had a city council meeting. So we want to welcome Kevin to our committee. Kevin represents EMS. Mr. Lopez was reappointed, and then Dr. Ryan was appointed to the committee. And Miss Lori Boyette was reappointed. So we talked about this at the last meeting. Just want to make sure everybody remembers. Can I get the next slide, please, sir? So the first thing is the state update. Ms. Liz?
So with the trauma rules, the last meeting that we had was in November, and because of the neonatal rules coming through and the adoption packet needing to be done, that has taken all of our focus. So we do not have a new revision on the trauma rules yet at this time, but in the next few weeks we will be working on that, and we will be setting up another meeting with stakeholders to go over a new revision.
Joy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hey, Elizabeth, as a RAC chair, I'm getting a lot of smaller level 4s, hearing whether it be rumor or whether it be fact and stuff, all these different suggestions and recommendations that are going into the rule, to the point where a lot of them are saying, if that goes into the rule, I'm throwing in my level 4 hat. And I guess my question is where can I direct them as the RAC chair to go look at the latest and greatest rule proposed revision, so that either I can allay their rumors or I can substantiate their concerns, or whatever in between?
The last revision is on our website.
Okay.
And so they can go directly there. Now, and I will say, just to, there are some things on the level 4 criteria that are going to be easier to fix and revise. So I know where the concern is coming from on several things, because we received the responses. But that is the last revision currently, is the one on our website.
Okay, is that the only one accessible on your website, or do I need to know a date, a revision date?
No, that is the only one available.
Okay.
And it's dated back into November, because that really is the last one. I haven't had a chance to work on them again.
Okay. And then I'm hearing these rumors from East Texas, West Texas and stuff, so I think it's something we need to keep a pulse on, because I'd hate to see a massive exodus of level 4s from the trauma system.
I know that there's a plan. Jane and I have talked about this with Liz, to have another day to look at the rules and move forward with that. So more to come. Anybody in the audience want to comment on that? Okay, next slide. Anybody from the state registry?
Dan Dow from Department of Sales Services. Are we going to go over the slideshow, or are we going to do? Okay.
This is just your time to update.
Just my time to update. We had a really productive 2015. 3 million records are submitted. The number of stakeholder requests, which are questions we get for stakeholders, went up from 400 in 2014 to 1,800 in 2015. And we conducted 16 webinars. Each month we still do 2 webinars, and the topics change, and we record these and then put them on the website later. So if you need to go back and look at them, they're going to be there. One change at the end of this year is we're moving to XML uploads. Currently we're doing text uploads, so it benefits everyone. If people are moving to this to XML uploads, it's going to help us out, and it's going to improve the data that goes in. And the other thing is, we've had some requests for data requests for 2015 data. 2015 data isn't closed until August 1st of this year, so that's when that data set will be closed, and then we'll start analyzing that data after that point in time.
Does any committee members have any questions for the registry?
I do. If I can submit XML formatted stuff now, can I? Didn't
Correct.
y'all?
That is
so
correct.
So there's a overlap transition.
Yep.
Anybody else? Anybody from the audience have a question? We do have a registry work group solution report that will come up in, I think, 2 more or 3 more slides, so don't go too far. Next slide.
Thank you.
Dr. Eastridge.
So the Emergency Healthcare Strategic Plan was completed in November. It's posted on the GTAC site, and probably this year, since we want this to be a living document, Dr. Greenberg and the rest of the council will probably start working on an update to the strategic plan. So now's the time to start looking at that document and seeing if there's any way we can make it better. So.
You could put the word trauma back in it to make it better. Did we have a legal ruling on that? I know. You guys think I'm being obnoxious, but we have a interim study on trauma out there. The Institute of Medicine is working on some things with trauma. So if they start looking on our website, they might think we don't have a problem with trauma. You want me to throw this one?
I did talk to Kathy about it, did send it to her, and she looked at it. We did not send it through for a legal opinion. When she looked in the body of the document, it does talk about trauma, so she felt like it was okay. She was all right with it. So that's where it is, Jory.
Okay. I feel defeated.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's not going away. Next slide. This is the Trauma Registry Workgroup Solution. So we did meet today. If I was in trauma peer review, I would say we had a controversial, healthy, robust discussion, probably for the first 20, 30 minutes, and it turned into a productive meeting. So we did talk about some action items. So one of the things we started with is, what did we have on the agenda for the original work group, and had we resolved those issues? And so, as you can imagine, there's some of those issues that we felt like had not been resolved, and we felt like some of them we had made some significant progress on them. So the first thing is education. So we felt like we needed quarterly education for the individuals that are submitting data to the registry. The registry staff have agreed to do that. That's one of our action items. And so education can be through webinar or different tools, resources. Any comments from the registry?
Yeah, we also plan on going to the Texas Trauma Coordinators Forum and giving an update there on any updates to our system, specifically our user guide and data dictionaries and any other things that are going to be important to the day-to-day operations of the registry.
Okay. The next thing was collaborative communication, and we felt like the work group was very productive today, and we want to make sure that we continue these meetings. So if you're sitting out there saying, well, how did I know this meeting occurred and I want to be part of that, you're welcome to come to the meeting. So it's always going to be on this day before the committee meeting. Yes?
Yeah, I just would like to back up to item 1 for just 1 sec here. The epidemiology group is doing a great job at educational ed webinars. They've been giving at least 2 a month for the last about 18 months, Dan? Yeah, is that accurate?
I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
Okay.
So the next thing is data request. So just in our hospitals, when we have a data request, I know for us at Parkland, we have a form that has to be filled out, very specific about what you want that data for, why you want that data, and the fields that you want, and then there's a 30-day turnaround time at minimum. So nobody can walk in and say, hey, I want you to get this, except a few people. But the bottom line is usually it takes 30 days. And so the registry staff are asking for the same type of process, is to have at least a 30-day notice. They want to know why you want the data, what you're going to use it for, and then the data elements. So any comments from the registry?
Yeah, I'd also add that we're getting a lot of requests for research type of data requests. People are looking to do more in-depth looks of their data. and we are producing public use data files. So if you fill out an unlimited use data agreement, we'll just give you the line level data stripped to PHI at the county level, so you can analyze it on your own if needed.
Okay. So the next thing on the report is the data reports. And so this is an area that we feel like we didn't make a lot of progress on. And part of it may be our fault from the stakeholders. The first one is the hospitals. So one of the key things that we talked to the group about originally was creating reports that the hospitals could receive back that help them fill out their application for trauma center designation or verification. And so there's been a complete turnover in the staff, so we need people to work with the group to identify that. So I'm going to ask Brenda, Robin, Tracy, people who do a lot of site surveys in Texas to come up with those reports that are routine, that the hospitals, first for the level 3s, second for the level 4s, and then we'll move into the 1s and 2s, of what they typically ask for, so that they can access those. And what my suggestion to them is they build those reports where I could go in and put in my user number and, you know, manipulate the time frames and be able to pull that data out. So can you all agree to do that and then touch base with them? And what we would like to have is the reports that you want by May. Think that's too soon? Okay. Anybody that wants to work with them, tag Brenda.
I think it would be very, very soon to develop an online automatic reporting tool like that. Okay. I think that data in spreadsheets and things like that is more possible, but we'd have to look about how long and how many elements and things like that
right.
Are in the data that you're asking for.
Well, they can tell you exactly what those hospitals need. So the next thing was EMS, and again, Brian Portello was very articulate about the types of data that the EMS agencies wanted. Unfortunately, Brian was not at the meeting today, so we need EMS input. So Kevin, you're going to get tagged for that to work with that group to identify what routine reports do EMS agencies want. And then from the RAC, again, I think Wanda, we need somebody who wants to come forward and work with them on standard reports. And part of those standard reports, and what I brought up, was the simple thing that was talked about at the RAC chairs last night, was the ability for the RACs to get the information on how many EMS agencies provided data to the registry and how many runs. And then I know from our RAC there are multiple reports that we want to have to help us. And then finally the committee. So when we went through this process, I guess 2 years ago, each of the committees identified these are the standard reports we want for every committee meeting. That, again, needs to be redone. So I'm just going to ask you, those of you that chair committees that are in the room, if you want reports from the state registry, you need to send them those data elements. But when you send them those data elements, you also need to send with it why you want that data and what you're trying to look at. So any questions on that?
Yeah, we asked that a subject matter expert be assigned to every single one of those reports. The subject matter expert is going to be able to give us some context and some clarity into the importance of the data and then how we should be looking at the data. Currently, there's a lot of requests out, but there's not a lot of context for us, so we just report back tables and figures, and we really can't extrapolate or speak to it in any coherent way because it's just a data request on fields that we get. So if a subject matter expert could be assigned to every single report that a committee asks for, then it would make our job a lot easier into producing good reports and things that would be valuable to the state.
Just to give you an idea, one of the things that we talked about is that the Trauma Systems Committee has asked them for double transfers, and we asked for those double transfers broken down by ISS score, and we also asked for those double transfers by the level of trauma center that initiated the first transfer, and also by some patient ages and cohorts, for example, shock, pediatric, and then orthopedic injuries. And so we're asking them to do it, but they don't understand the correlation to, they're not clinical. They don't understand what that means that we're asking for. And so for us, all of you in the room, when we talk about a double transfer of a shock patient, we're all going to equate that to a patient who has a prolonged transport to definitive care. So we know that means there may be a negative outcome for that patient. But what we learned today is working with the registry group, some of them have some clinical knowledge, but a lot of them don't. And so they're really good with the numbers and the registry and the software and the IT, but they need that clinical expert to help guide them on these reports. So when you come up with these reports that you've asked for those committees, we're asking that you assign an expert to come to the meeting, the Trauma Registry Solutions Work Group, and talk about your report. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, and someone we can just, email during the week or email when we're creating the report to say, does this number make sense? Does it look like it's right, along the right path? And something like that would help us out a lot.
Right. So that the item that, some of the other items we talked about were data dictionary. Everybody in the room should know that we made a decision last year in January to move to the National Trauma Data Bank. So the data dictionary that we use is the National Trauma Data Bank Dictionary, right? And then the user's manual. So you want to talk about how you're going to update the user's manual?
Yeah, we make changes to the system continually throughout the year, so we agreed that it would be good quarterly to say if there's any changes to the user's manual to give it at the Texas Trauma Coordinators Forum. We're also looking at ways to get onto different listservs outside of our own so that people understand if there are changes to these user manuals, that where to find them and what the changes are. But that's a goal moving forward.
Good. And then data sharing. So if you remember, there was discussion about EMS and hospitals and how hospitals might access pre-hospital reports through the registry and how EMS might access hospitals' data through the registry. And so again, that's one of the action items that they're still working on.
Yeah, currently it's under legal review, but it's a priority of ours, and we're gonna let you know as soon as possible as we hear a decision.
And then the standalone ER. So what this is related to is that in the registry wanted to be able to identify if we get a patient that comes to us or is transferred to us from a standalone ER, we wanted to be able to track that. So if we wanted to give reports or look at outcomes, we have a way to do that. And so you want to explain what you've done to address that?
So I'm Adrian Condor. I'm part of the Registry's Operations Support Team. For standalone ERs, we've got a lot of feedback from the hospitals. It's a tracking purpose for them. They need DSHSID numbers for these standalone ERs. So what we have done is gone ahead and assigned DSHSID numbers for the true standalones. What a true standalone is they are separately licensed from a hospital, meaning they are not tethered, they don't have the same license number as the hospital. So to help out our EMS and our hospitals track where the patients are actually coming from, we have issued out the DSHSID numbers, and that is, of course, inside the registry under our entity reference code list. You can definitely you can email us if you need to know exactly how to get to that point.
Okay. And then finally, the thing that brought up the controversy in the meeting was brought up at the last committee, and it has to do with the fact that the state registry built in the AAAM injury severity scoring in the registry. And so that could be a really good thing. So we were like, well, how did we validate that and who did this and that sort of stuff? So you can imagine. So again, we're going to put together a team to try to work with them to validate it. So what that means is if I send data from Parkland, it's going to go in and there's no revalidation. But if I'm Munster, Texas, and I'm going to use Maven and I'm going to do the entry myself, then it will do the injury severity scoring. And so we wanted to make sure that that was accurate. So we're going to need some volunteers that use the registry a lot that can help validate that. So if there's anybody in the audience that wants to do that, I don't know, Brenda, do you want to put together a group to take the lead on that? Because we were going to use several trauma centers. I know Andy had volunteered that he would help. Volunteer, voluntold, I'm not sure. But it needs to be individuals that understand ISS scoring. Did I hear y'all volunteer? Okay. Anybody else that was there have any comments? Laura, you were there? Comments?
Except for the training, so that training will include. The only other part we talked about with the ISS calculator, which they're working on, is the training will definitely include training people how to use it. So once it's validated, making sure that people are trained to know how to use it as well.
Just the last comment on the first one, the education. So our team has worked tremendously on trying to help out our stakeholders with getting education out there. So part of that is we've created, last year we had 16 webinars for our stakeholders, and we are already going to be having our number 4s next week for our EMS community. One thing that we listen to our stakeholders, which thank you all stakeholders for entering your data. We really appreciate what you do. We've listened and we've heard that our trauma registrars need more education. So what we've done is last Wednesday, we actually had our first, which we're going to do quarterly now to satisfy that as well, our first trauma registrar training. We're going to do that every quarter, and it consists of, we tell you why the registry exists, what's the need for it. We break it down to different roles and responsibilities within a registry. We also go down and show you exactly how to enter your data. And then also any suggestions, that's where we're open for. The Ross team is always here to help. We want to make things better for our stakeholders. So any suggestions that you can provide, feedback, just a comment, good or bad, I mean, that's how we're going to grow. So definitely for the webinars, we're going to keep going forward with that, and definitely with our trauma registrar. So we just had our first one. We're going to continue with those.
Any committee members have questions, comments? Anybody from the audience have any questions, comments on the discussion of the Registry Solutions Work Group? The only thing I would say is it got off to a rocky start, but I think that we're on the same page now, and we have a commitment from both sides to really work in a collaborative manner. So if there's anybody out there who wants to come to this meeting, please come. Bring your questions, your solutions. Again, we want it to be a collaborative practice. At one point in time, Kathy Perkins had pulled together a group that was called the Oversight Group. That group eventually turned into other groups, and there's never been any solid working group with the registry on a consistent basis. So we're going to try to make this work group, do that. So if you have any recommendations for us, or if you would like to join us, please let us know. And again, the meeting will always be sometime around noon before the Trauma Systems Committee.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much. Dr. Eastridge, the Medical Directors Work Group.
Yeah, so the Medical Directors Work Group has been working on a couple things. We actually recently completed the review of the burn guideline that was a very well done document by several of our trauma coordinators across the state. We'll get that passed along to Brenda here in the next day or so. We are currently working on, probably the lowest hanging fruit that we're currently working on is the geriatric trauma and the TBI. We lost our neurosurgeon recently. He's still willing to help us out with this, but we're looking for some neurosurgical, integrate on a neurosurgeon or two onto the Medical Directors Work Group. So if you have any ideas, please pass those along. So hopefully by the next meeting, we should have those two finished also. Nothing else to report.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? Next thing is the advanced practice provider. Is Kelly in the room?
She was unable to attend, but she said they did not meet over the holidays, and then they're going to resume their conference calls shortly. Okay. We'll have some report.
So Kelly Stowell from Baylor Scott and White is doing the work group. Go back to Swan. Yeah, that's it. And so what we've asked them to do is to develop a example job description for the advanced practice provider in the trauma world and come up with expectations, hours of coverage, example credentialing, a clinical ladder for these individuals, an orientation manual, and then a collaborative practice agreement template. So this is what this work group is working on. Next. This is the Trauma Registrars Work Group. So Irene Lopez was asked to help with this and work with trauma registrars. And the idea was to come up with example job descriptions, education, training, expectations, roles and responsibilities, job functions, and integration to the trauma program from the Trauma Registry's viewpoint for all levels of trauma center, and then an example orientation manual and an example of the clinical ladder process. So I didn't see Irene in the room. Does anybody want to comment on this?
There was an empty space on my desk, so I think that came to me. And I'm putting together a work group, and we're starting it around the first week of March. So we'll get the manual together for you.
Good. So the job responsibilities and functions, they're very critical, because when you look at trauma registry productivity, a lot of people have the mindset that the trauma registrar sits in an office and is always at the computer doing stuff, right? So if that registrar has to stop data entry or data abstraction to do a research report, that takes time away. So if that same registrar has to go to the trauma committee, then that takes time away. In addition to that, if they do all the charges for your trauma activation, that takes time away. So again, the registrar's role is very different from center to center to center. So we wanted to be able to provide this type of information so people could actually see the registrar is not somebody that sits at a computer their entire shift. They do very different things in different hospitals. So that's the purpose of that. Next group, next slide. We had our first Trauma Quality Improvement Committee meeting, a collaborative initiative meeting today. I'm going to talk briefly about it, but I'm sure Brenda will talk a little bit more about it too. Dinah. So the goal, these are the action items after today, is that all of the committees are going to, the hospital participants are going to go back and do a drill down on their data. What we identified was there are two patient populations that we want to look at through the TQIP model. The first one is the geriatric, and the second one is the traumatic brain injury. Now, Sally Snow is there, and so pediatrics are also going to look at the traumatic brain injury. So two significant things were identified: the ongoing need for training, how to use the TQIP process, and then data quality. So you can see how they're all related. And so we asked Holly, who was here with us from TQIP, to help set up training webinars to do the drill down and use data. So we're going to be working with her and hopefully have 3 training webinars between now and the May meeting for centers to be able to use. And so the meeting today was consistently level 1s and level 2s, the level and the pediatric trauma centers, and then as we move forward, that pilot will include the level 3 facilities. Any questions from the committee? Laura, you were there. Any comments?
Excuse me. The biggest things were data quality and training. I think there was a consensus on that being very important to lay the groundwork.
Dr. Gandhi, you were there. Any comments?
The other aspect was the items of interest, as you mentioned, in the outcome, which was mortality.
Mm-hmm. Alex, you were there. Any comments? Anybody in the audience want to make a comment about this? Y'all are very quiet today. Are y'all tired? You worn out? What's the deal?
Yep.
And then one thing to note, the American College of Surgeons, the Orange Book has changed in this aspect. When it first came out, it said that you had to have a benchmarking process, right? That benchmarking process has now been redefined as TQIP. So all level 1s and level 2s, the benchmarking program that they do must be through the TQIP model. Any questions? Next slide. Standalone ERs. Did I see Dr. Greenberg in the back?
He's sitting out at a booth in the lobby if somebody wanted to grab him.
We did have our first meeting in November. There was lots of discussion. There's still lots of discussion. There was no final answers. The number one priority is to try to type the standalone ERs. I know San Antonio has already done that, but we wanted the group to do that.
He should be right there.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next thing. Wait till he comes back. So the next item to talk about is the Hartford Consensus and the Stop the Bleeding campaign. So Eric and his team have secured the website. So it's www.stopthebleedingtexas.org. That will be the official site. Obviously,
It's actually Stop the Bleed, isn't it?
Stop
Isn't it,
the
Eric?
Bleed.
Stopthebleed.org, right?
Stop. Yeah.
No ING, bleed.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, that's all spelled out.
So it's stopthebleedtexas.org. So here's where we're at with that. We have worked with registries to identify the ICD-9, and Andy helping me with this, so thank you, Andy. The ICD-9, ICD-10 codes that would be applicable to the tourniquet use. We're going to kick that to the medical directors. There's some that I question, like for shoulder injuries, whether or not you could put a tourniquet on that. So we will ask the medical directors to look at that, and then we will begin to track those ICD-9s. And then we also have the CPT code identified for application of the tourniquet. So we have the website up. Yesterday we had the first Beacon training class here. And then we've had a conference call with the leaders to try to talk about how to move this forward and who should be involved. So right now it's predominantly healthcare providers. Their recommendation is to move it out to some of the school systems and the law enforcement agencies. So people have assignments to identify who needs to be involved in that. Any questions? Eric, Dinah, you want to comment on this?
So, a couple things. When you go to stopthebleedtexas.org, it will take you to a state map of your racks. And then there's a choice on the left. There's a menu choice, or you can just click on the rack. And then our idea is to have the materials there. We'll have a little blurb about what it is there. And then we want you to have your local providers who could do the training and that kind of stuff listed there. So we're anxious to add people's information and stuff. And it should be where you have a rack or a small person who's going to be kind of your point of contact. And they can work with Frankie and add names whenever you want. So put more and more instructors and stuff together. We want you to be able to kind of own that as your own little mini site, at least to enter in your people and your programs and contact information. It should be fairly straightforward.
So we want to
That
think.
way, the curriculums and all that stuff, you're not having to go find the right curriculum, it'll just all automatically be updated. So if something changes, it'll change in all 22 pages if there's a new handout or something else. Does that make sense?
Sounds good.
Yeah, well, maybe a trauma coordinator who cares about, I mean, it doesn't have to be a rack person. Somebody in your rack should probably take that.
Become the champion. I want to thank Dr. Gandhi, who did a first class yesterday. So it was a productive class. There were 40-something people in that class. So they were in the first Train the Trainer group that's official. I want to thank TTAF for helping set that up because they helped with the registration. So, anything else on that, Eric?
Actually, I do have one question that I frankly don't know if I should know this or not. To have the certification, it has to be taught by a PHTLS provider. And the providers have to be taught by an instructor. Is that the way that the process works?
I actually asked for a letter, sent a letter asking for clarification on that to our state representative on that.
Okay, so the problem that's come, that's not a problem. There's a challenge I think we have. If we had a school district, we had one school district that did it with they had a PHLS instructor teach the school nurses. Mm-hmm. And then the school nurses went back to their schools and taught all of their teachers. But theoretically, I mean, I know those school nurses are not PHTLS providers.
Right.
Unless they were life or something. So we could potentially have a gap where I don't think they could give them the certificate. Now, the teachers may not care. I mean, from my perspective, as long as they get the training and they have the kits and that kind of stuff, and they take the course, they go through the course, that's actually the important part, I think, from our perspective. But it does beg the question, if there's not a PHTLS provider doing that actual instruction, you know, as we go to malls, or we go to, you know, other public entities where we're going to be training, I don't know that we have enough PHTLS providers in America to be able to do this, as opposed to teaching as a force multiplier, you know, school nurses, who I think are other adult education people. They're nurses or, you know, other adult education, clinical education people that may not be PHTLS providers that absolutely can teach this course effectively and be force multipliers for the education.
So this is the issue is this: if you call and ask about the Beacon class, they will tell you that if you go through the class, you can teach the class. They want it rolled out as fast as possible. So I ask about that because that's what the website says. So as soon as I get some type of clarification, I will let everybody know.
I wonder if there'd be an opportunity to, if it just limits those instructor trainers to PHTLS, if there would be an opportunity to expand that to TNCC instructors or ATCN instructors or ITLS instructors, or
So
I don't know. Just
if you were at the TQIP meeting, I asked the question, why can't this be integrated with every PHTLS class, TNCC class, you know, ABLS class, every class that's coming out, because they're all coming from three primary locations: the American College of Surgeons, PHTLS, ATLS, ENA, and STN. So why can't all of those groups integrate that class? I mean, it's a short, why can't they integrate that? So more to come on that. So,
Okay.
I mean, from a national perspective, so the Hartford Consensus, if you read that, there's a letter from Obama in there and everybody else about how critical this is and to roll it out as quickly as possible. That everybody should understand and how to use the tourniquet, the, you know, stop the bleeding gauze, and how to pack things and hold pressure.
So everything you're saying makes sense to me. I believe, though, that there's a force multiplication challenge with us counting on, even if you did all those other people with ATLS and ITLS and whatever, it's still, you're not going to, we're going to our Region 20, we're scheduling a meeting with our school district Region 20 thing. And we're going to get the people who control all of the school nurses, right? And we just thought about being able to get that person and then do a big class or 2 or 3 classes for all the school nurses in the school districts that are inside our Region 20. And everybody has a region that your area is part of. We could blanket Texas really quickly, but the people who are actually going to be teaching the teachers are school nurses, and they are not going to be
I agree.
those things. So I do think the people who do the training, the trainer should be PHTLS providers, right? It's the next level down past that. That's where we've got to make sure we.
So one of the other things we want to do is offer these classes at this GTAC meeting. So we and offer more than one. So at the May meeting, we are going to look at scheduling more classes, and hopefully Dr. Gandhi will be available and other individuals to help us teach those classes. Any questions? Donna, did you want to say something from TTAF's perspective? Okay. Next slide. So did Dr. Greenberg come in the room?
Not yet. He's pretty. I think it's going to be one of mine, but it's not.
All right, got it. So member reports. So Dr. Eastridge from GTAC, you have anything?
No, nothing specific from the GTAC Council. We've been working on the rules revisions. That's basically the sort of work product we're working on currently.
Okay. From the ACS region, anything? Go back.
So from ACS Region 6, I think we're working on many of the same issues that the other regions are working on across the country. some of the most prominent issues include the trauma center allocation and designation on the basis of need. Just trying to wrap our arms around that one. How to integrate our standalone emergency rooms into our regional trauma systems, if that is it's applicable depending on the environment. Our national meeting is next month. And next month, there's a couple of topics that we're going to take on. One is this will be the first COT meeting since the rollout of Stop the Bleed. So there's going to be some focused discussion on Stop the Bleed and how trauma centers and trauma systems can work to basically drive that initiative along. And one of the more contentious issues is the Committee on Trauma is going to work on basically a consensus firearms position statement, not a gun control statement, basically a firearms position statement looking at education, research, and other issues to deal with the issue of firearms in the country. That's all I have, Jory.
So at the last meeting, Dr. Gandhi gave an update and talked about the American College of Surgeons' recommendation to take this tool and use data from your region to evaluate the number of trauma centers that are needed. So you may have to go on that side to walk through this.
Okay.
The typing is pretty small.
So the tool has really several aspects to it. Population, immediate transport time, lead agency, severely injured, and then there's level one trauma centers. The idea... Does everybody want me to repeat what I just said? Okay. So the tool, as Dr. Eastridge just said, is based on a need-based tool, and the idea is to have a simple tool that's easy to use, and that's basically common sense. So it's based on 5 aspects: population in the area, median transport time, lead agency, severely injured patients, and then level 1 trauma centers. It's also, this simple tool has been rolled out in Florida, correct, Dr. Eastridge, this tool? And, right. So it's starting to be validated in other areas. So we try to apply this tool to our area, our RAC E. And so this is data from RAC E. So total population, 7.4 million. Median transport time was 11 minutes. Lead system or agency. The statement of support for trauma center. The lead agency's position that no additional trauma centers are needed, -5 points. Going down to severely injured patients, 187. That's discharged from level 4 and undesignated. And then level trauma centers, the number that you have, level 1, -5, level 2s. You can go back again. So level 2 centers in our region, there's 3, so it's -3. Level 3, already in the TSA, it's half a negative point for each one, so there's 7, so it's -3.5. So total points currently is -11.5. Next. So the number of severely injured patients, if you go through, the expected would be about 4,000 in our region. It's about 2,100 for annual total going down. So that was -2 points. And then the total score was -2.5. So what does that mean? So again, the scoring system, if you have positive points, then you need a trauma center. If you have negative points, you don't need a trauma center. And so for us, it's additional trauma centers, right. Thank you, Dr. Eastridge. So our score was -2.5, which suggests that we do not need any additional trauma centers. And one of the issues I had with the data, if you go back one, is over here. the severely injured patients discharged from level 4 or undesignated. And that's the undesignated part. We don't necessarily have data for that. And so that number is probably a low number. But again, we don't know for sure. And so that's one of the areas that I think we need to kind of work on in terms of this particular tool. What we recommend is that other regions, other RACs, do the same kind of tool within their area, and we'd like to know what kind of comes out of that. So we can send the tool, this preliminary tool. I don't know, Colin, can we send it out? Okay, so I'll send it to Colin, and then he can send it out to the RACs. And next time, if we can have a few minutes to go over what kind of data the different RACs have gotten, I think it would be very interesting for our state. Questions, comments, concerns, issues, perspectives?
Dr. Gandhi?
Sir.
What happens with the data when you get a positive number? What do
Great
we
question.
do?
So a positive number means that you need a trauma center in your RAC. And so then it points out to what places do you have, and in which locale would be the best to have a trauma center, and then to encourage that institution.
I think another question that actually Alex poses, what level of trauma center do you need?
Great question. And again, a lot of that is going to depend on the area. So the level, if you go up to the top where it says population, it's going to depend on what population you have within your area, and then median transport time, I think is the other big one. The support will be there if you need it. That's what the tool shows. Then your lead agency would support that. And then going down to level 1 centers in the area 2 or 3. And this kind of go backwards. So if the tool originally shows that you have something, you could actually kind of do a backwards by putting in the number which level that you're thinking to get a 0. Does that make sense? 0 is your perfect state within your RAC, state of affairs in terms of trauma centers.
So the reason this is fairly important that we do this as a system is that there are already legislators who are asking the question, do we have too many trauma centers? Are there areas within our region, within our state, where we need more trauma centers? So I'll let our expert on legislation talk about this when she comes up there, but I know that there was a conference call with THA where this was discussed multiple times, that there's a belief that there are too many trauma centers in Texas. So this will validate we're right where we need to be, or maybe there's areas where there's a little, some wiggle room to improve our system. Any questions on this? Anybody on the committee have a question? So Colin, we were going to ask if that goes to the RAC chairs.
So this is a recommendation. So, you know, what can the state do with this information? I mean, it's not really binding. I mean, it would be up to any individual hospital system to say, we're going to stay in anyway. So does the state have any teeth here?
No, that's a great question, and I was just wondering what they do with the data when it's in a highly negative number.
So
it's
let me
oversaturated.
Right.
Let me talk a little bit about the cost. So when we first started our trauma center, I tracked the cost of going from non-designated to designated. Now, obviously, that was a long time ago, but it was $2,500 for a patient. And we had a hospital where we did a lot of trauma, and we had a lot of those resources that were already in the system. So we didn't have to get CT scan overnight and a lot of those issues. So I think it might make hospitals make better decisions about whether or not they're going to invest those resources. And then certainly looking at the levels that they're going to invest in. So that's one option. So Jane, you were going to say something?
Well, it sounds like a good tool for the regions to use when they're doing, looking at what the needs are within the region. The law actually says for our system that any facility that meets the requirements must be designated. So the department cannot withhold designation based on the perceived need or lack of need in the region if the facility meets the requirements and desires to be designated.
So, Jane, if I may ask a question, please.
Yes, sir.
If one of the requirements to be designated is RAC support, and a RAC finds that, I don't know, we'll just say RAC Z finds that there is a negative 10, which suggests that you have more than enough trauma centers. Can the RAC not support a application for designation?
Well, I think the rule actually says that the facilities participate at the RACs, and we don't.
It's not a support.
It's not support.
Participation.
It's participation. We deliberately do not define that participation. The hope is that these discussions are had at the regional level, and as a system, some decisions are made as to what makes sense. How many level 1s do we have in this area? How many 3s do we have? And some of that is, obviously going to be driven by the financial abilities of the facility. But the RAC, if the RAC did not support it and they participate at the RAC, they've met the requirement.
Okay.
The department cannot deny a designation to a facility that meets the requirements, and the requirements as defined in our rule. So that's really the crux of it. Any other questions? Did I answer your question
Absolutely,
sufficiently?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Jane, what does it take to fix the rule?
You waited till I turned it off and put it back in its little cradle. It would take a change in the law. So this actually is language within the law that is then put into our rule also. So it would actually take a change in the law. And I know where you're going. It's that certificate of need type approach, which we've not had in Texas.
One more question, Jane. Over the years, in terms of, there's been an increase in the number of trauma centers in the state of Texas. Has the funding for the trauma centers stayed the same, increased, or decreased over that same time period? Let's say 10 years.
Well, when you go back and you look at the historical funding issues, when 5111 came in, there was a definite spike increase in the number of trauma centers. When the SDA trauma add-on came into being, there was a definite spike in the number of trauma centers. Now, the 5111 pot has been emptied. So Medicaid changed their rules. Now, this is the rule part, not the law part. Changed their rules on the percentages that the level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s were going to get on the SDA trauma add-on. This is an effort to push more money out to the trauma centers. So the level 1s went from 14 to like 28, or 12% to 28% for their trauma add-on. So it was a substantial increase. Same thing for the 2s and the 3s, the 4s not so much. Once this pot is emptied, we don't know where it's going to go. So if the funding's not there, I would expect to see the reverse trend occur.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So we're going to move forward. So these are our stakeholder reports, the Texas Trauma Coordinators Forum. Is Robin here? Courtney, you want to do the report?
There we go. We met on Tuesday as our normal meeting. We have our meeting here in conjunction with all the other meetings. We had 134 attendees. This was over our strategic plan in January. We tweaked the agenda some. This was our trial with the agenda tweaked, changing up some of the committee structures, how they meet, so that we could really expound upon the levels and the benefit that they have, also the registries. Started moving forward through some of the 2016 goals, and then our 2 education offerings, one being the leadership, administrative, building our professionals within, and then the clinical education afterwards. So,
Thank you. Anybody have questions for Courtney? Anybody in the audience? The next is the emergency nursing. I know Sally's here.
Just a couple things about Stop the Bleed. The use of tourniquets is already in TNCC as a skills intervention in a skill station, so that's already there. And I do know that the 8th edition TNCC revision work team has been put in place, and that Stop the Bleed will be included in their update. The TNCC courses that are scheduled for the state of Texas in February include 28 provider courses. 10 of those are marked as full. There's 2 instructor courses scheduled, and 1 of them is full. In March, there's 28 provider courses, 9 marked as full, and 1 instructor course, and it still has openings. April has 28 provider courses scheduled, so that's 3 months in a row, 28 provider courses. 5 of the April courses are marked as full, and there's no instructor course scheduled for April as of today. And then in May, there are already 11 provider courses scheduled. 1 is full, and the one instructor course, and it's not full. So there's lots of courses going on in the next few months in Texas.
Thank you, Sally, and congratulations for all your work. We did have a Society of Trauma Nurses meeting. STN does not have a chapter meeting, but we did meet, and we actually asked ENA to come and join us, and so we're going to try to do this at the May meeting as well, and the goal is to just identify course needs. So we do have topic classes. We have 4 more topic classes scheduled for this year. We're looking at individuals that feel like they need topic courses specifically in their area and other courses as well. So I talked to STN, and I talked to Elizabeth and Jane about the opportunity to do a level 3 workshop, level 4 workshop, specifically for PI, for people who had gone through the topic course and needed some more activities. And so STN did say that we could do that using sort of the topic format. So we talked about this meeting, looking for places and times, and we kind of decided we didn't have enough time. So we are going to do that in the May GTAC meeting. So stay tuned for that. And then we're going to do additional BCon classes. So the Texas College of Emergency Medicine, did Bobby come back in? Nope. Any level 4 updates? Scott, Kathy, you and have that. Level 3s, Kathy's got that. Anything from anybody that's a level 4 or level 3 you want to bring forward? Level 2s? Lori?
Mainly continuing to pour through the Orange Book, having good meetings, level 1 and 2 meetings with TTCF. Terry Valentino's leading that. Have had some conversations. The in-house anesthesia requirement for level 2s is kind of sticky. Some have met that requirement in the past with CRNAs that cover for the OB side, and I think there's been under the facts, a clarification that OB CRNA can no longer fill that. They have to be dedicated to the main OR, and that may cause an issue. So I'm checking more into that, and I'll follow up.
Okay. The level 1s, Dr. Gandhi, Dr. Eastridge, Alex, anything?
I think the only thing really from the level 1 perspective is all the level 1s have really been the same thing we talked about from the perspective of the Region 6 is that we're particularly the competition amongst trauma centers and the needs-based allocation are really prominent issues for a lot of the level 1s.
Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, exactly as Dr. Eastridge said in terms of level ones. And I think level twos as well, as they're increasing within the region.
Alex, anything? Pediatrics?
So one thing, this is a crossover between the work with the pediatric committee as well as the registry, is the transfer guidelines that have come out. And so there will be work with the registry group for some reports related to those transfer recommendations and guidelines that will be worked on. So hopefully we'll see some data with that coming up soon, but that's it.
The Texas Hospital Association, Ms. Elizabeth? Hello?
Thank you. Is it on or off? It's on. I'm Elizabeth Schoberg, Associate General Counsel of the Texas Hospital Association. I'm also a registered nurse. And I come before you seeking clarification on a statement that I think I may have heard. Did someone say that they had heard that THA is against expanding the number of facilities that are designated in the state?
I've never heard that.
You haven't heard that? Okay. I just want to be sure, because we are working diligently to, if we can't save the DRP, we're doing legal research to identify other states' means of funding trauma. So I just wanted you to know that's one of our main priorities. Thank you.
If people understood that that's what I said, the issue is that the legislators are beginning to ask, are there too many trauma centers, not THA? I want to make sure that that's clarified. Anybody from EMS committees that want to, any comments?
I can give one real quick for them this morning, Sonny. And I think the biggest thing for the group here is that the telemedicine project is starting to move forward. That'll be J&K racks initially that will be involved in that. Texas Tech is building the protocol on that, and we'll start working with the trauma facilities and the EMS providers. They've already had some stakeholder meetings in San Angelo, Midland, and Odessa. It'll be completely voluntary on that program, and they are hoping to get that up and running by the end of this year. And I think the biggest thing they're going to look at on that is making sure that they're getting the person to the correct facility. It's not just trauma-based, but it's everything in general.
Any questions for Kevin? Dr. Greenberg, would you like to give us an update on the ER and anything from the Texas Emergency Medicine physicians?
I heard you were looking for me.
Yeah, it was.
I don't have a report.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
Well, at least we got that.
No. So I'll actually start with Texas College of Emergency Physicians, which I didn't know I was on your agenda that I approved for the committee, so sorry. But anyway, for Texas College of Emergency Physicians, following along with THA, we're very concerned about the driver responsibility program. That program is very much under attack, provides a lot of funding for us, and we're going to have to keep an eye on that. And strategy on how to do that is going to be very important, because we have to be careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If that program goes away, we have to make sure that we have funding. So that's from the Texas College of Emergency Physicians. Now I'll put on my other hat for the Freestanding Emergency Department Task Force. I'm presenting to you as the past chairman of that task force, past being one of the best four-letter words in the English language. Emily Kidd is going to chair that now, and the reason she's chairing that is because I am now interim chair of the council. Interim being one of the worst words in the English language, because it's always awkward. But I didn't think it was appropriate for me to chair both of those. Task force did meet in November while I was still chair. We had a very robust discussion. Even though it does not sound like a big deal, the question before the task force was, should freestanding emergency departments be considered part of the emergency healthcare system, and should they be designated and categorized? And I'd like to say that there was pretty much overwhelming support that they should be part of the healthcare system, emergency healthcare system, including trauma. And there was support for designation and categorization. It sounds like a small thing, but if you think a year ago or 2 years ago, I think the sentiment in the room would have been very different. So fast forward to tomorrow, There will be another meeting of the task force. Dr. Kidd will be chairing that task force. The members of the task force are only going to be comprised from council and from council committees. And I know a lot of people have been invited and are interested in this topic. It's a very popular topic in Texas. So on tomorrow, they will start the process to determine what's the best way to categorize freestanding EDs, and also in there is and other alternate destinations, because now that we have some psych centers, some sobering centers, can those be part of the emergency healthcare system? But categorization of those centers, and then whether or not we recommend designation by the state. Now, with all of that said, it is not clear that DSHS has the authority to do either one of those things. But everybody knows what happens in 2017. Legislature's back in session, and we're sure that they will be asking questions to DSHS about what, that there will be legislation regarding it and what is the opinion. And we need to be able to support DSHS in having an answer. So that's the emphasis behind it. So I will be happy to answer any questions about the freestanding ED task force.
Any questions from the committee members? Any questions from anybody in the audience? Next slide. Thank you.
I was happy to come.
Dinah, do you want to come talk about TTAF? We've already talked about SDN.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the areas that I'd like to touch on, I know there's been some discussion, obviously, on Texas TQIP, Stop the Bleed, and some references to legislation, and I want to focus my comments on that. There was a public health hearing yesterday. They looked at disaster preparedness and health issues, and our own Eric Epley testified, as well as Dr. Purse. Both of them did a fabulous job, and we got the trauma system. There was a lot of information that was shared about the trauma system. A lot of credit was given and questions specifically on RACs and their role. And Sarah Davis and some of the other committee members made sure to ask some good questions. And again, I think Eric did a really good job, as well as Dr. Purse, in painting the whole preparedness system and the role that RACs, hospitals, EMS, everybody plays as they work on preparedness. So I think it was a very good hearing, not only from just that preparedness issue, but in getting the issues out there about RACs and better educating legislators. There seems to be a growing light bulb, or the intensity of the light is increasing, of the understanding of what RACs do. And so I think, every little bit counts. And so I appreciate all of you that have taken time to visit with your legislators about RACs, the trauma system, EMS, hospitals, EMTF, all the different roles, which plays into the big interim study. And when I say big, it's a joint hearing between House Appropriations and the House Public Health Committee, and they are looking at the entire trauma system, trauma and emergency healthcare system. We have been in communication with legislators and staff on that study and are anticipating that it'll likely be late spring, early summer before they actually hold that hearing. So the good thing about that is we have some time to prepare and get our ducks in a line and make sure we know what we want to ask the legislature, what we want to present to the legislature, and are working with some different work groups that are getting kicked off to pull that data together to make sure that we tell the story that the RACs want to tell the story that EMTF wants to tell, EMS, hospitals, and try to put that all together. There's obviously a number of different groups, like the Hospital Association, the teaching hospitals, Torch. As soon as you start naming groups, then you're going to leave somebody out. But there are a number of groups that are working on that particular study, and we're trying to work with them and trying to partner with them as best we can and complement what they're doing. Because I know, as Elizabeth mentioned, they have a big study that they're working on, looking at other states' financing, and then also within Texas. So that hearing, late May, maybe early summer. But then the driver responsibility program, there was a hearing 2 weeks ago, and it went better than the hearing during the legislative session. There is absolute interest in getting rid of the program, but I think, we're sort of in the same ballgame, and Senator Nichols, who is chairing that committee, seems to really understand that you can't just do away with the money, that the money, the source of funds that are coming in to support not only trauma system, but general revenue is very, very significant, and you cannot just do away with it. So I think he's very measured in the way he's approaching the study, and our approach, as we have visited with legislators and staff, has been we want the funding to continue. It does not have to be the driver responsibility program, but we have got to have a replacement. It cannot just go away. And they seem to be understanding that. They really are hearing that. But as Jory mentioned, we are getting some questions about when the trauma system was first funded in 2000.